Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews. This is the Amargasaurus. This is version 2 because they re-released most of the Terra by Battat figures a few years ago. They started to show up in Targets all across the United States. They were re-released with newer paint schemes, some of which are better than the older ones. Some paint applications I think look better on the older ones, and there was also a bunch of figures that they did not include with the newer ones like the Dilophosaurus and Utah Raptor. But as I said, this Amargasaurus is really nice, so let's go ahead and get a closer look right now. Now as you can see, the head sculpt looks pretty decent, but at the same time it's kind of small and really muted as far as I think the detail goes. Some of it might have to do with the fact that the paint application is kind of ugly, in my opinion. Like this tannish brown type color is just so heavily applied that I think maybe the sculpt and detail is taken away a little bit by that. It's hard to focus, there we go. You can see that there does appear to be some decent sculpt included, and the head sculpt is incredibly small. You can see right there. But for the most part, I think it looks okay, but as far as Terra by Battat figures go, I think this is probably my least favorite as far as the head sculpts go, just because it's not quite as nice as some of the others. However, it does still look decent, and from a distance, you can really see that it does look quite nice overall. I also don't like, however, the fact that they've glossed like so much of this paint up here. It's just kind of hard to actually pick up on some of the sculpt and detail due to how shiny the paint is. But you can see that the eyes are sculpted out pretty nicely. The detail around the eyes looks alright. The eyes themselves are painted kind of sloppily, but nothing terrible. I mean, they look okay, but they're just not perfect. You can see that the inside of the mouth is painted, and also the teeth are painted a little bit in there, but it's so small and so hard to get in there and see. It's actually impressive in general that they were able to paint the inside of the mouth, but to actually see that they've sculpted some of the teeth and stuff out in there is pretty impressive as well. As you start to run down the neck here, you can see some hanging skin in the throat area. You can also see that trademark Amargasaurus type sail looking area. It really looks beautiful. Those spines that run along the spinal column here with that kind of sail-like appearance looks fantastic. I love the paint application they've used there with that orange, kind of giving it such a bright and beautiful appearance, really giving it such a majestic beauty overall to an incredible looking sauropod. You can also see that the skin texture is pretty nice as you run down the neck. Doesn't look bad, it's just very fine detailing. My camera really does not want to focus on this guy for some reason. And you've got some brown stripes that run down the length of the neck, along with this darker brown up here at the top, a little bit of a lighter brown, and then this kind of creamy yellowish coloration on the underside. And then you get down here into the shoulder. You can really see the shoulder blade there in the skin kind of sticking out and protruding. It does look somewhat shrink wrapped for the most part because it almost looks sickly at certain areas just because of how bad the bone structure of the leg is sticking out here, and the hip bone here. It does look like it's kind of starving a little bit. But at the same time, it still is pretty nice looking. The skin texture looks really nice, that's for sure. And you can see a good bit of the movement being portrayed throughout this leg as this leg is lifting up. You can see the nail there is painted pretty nicely on the front leg there, right there, and over here. There's no sloppiness really to them at all. Some beautiful hanging skin all over here in the stomach region. Lots of really nice loose hanging skin there, which actually kind of also maybe furthers the idea that this is kind of a sickly, starving dinosaur, because he looks like maybe the skin was once filled with the body, and now that it's lost a whole bunch of weight, now it's kind of got some skin sagging. Maybe I'm just looking too much into that, I don't know. But you can see that the skin texture looks pretty good for the most part all over. You can see the hip bone right there, and then you can also see some nice musculature here in the rear thigh. As you come down, beautiful calf muscles. The nails appear to be painted really nicely here on the rear leg. As you come back up here, you can see again that the detail along the spinal column of the dinosaur does look really quite nice. If it wasn't so glossy, you could probably pick up on it a little better. And then we run out the length of the tail. The tail is nice and long. If we stretched it out, it would be really quite long. It comes up and curls over the top in a really nice, beautiful, and majestic looking curve. And I think these stripes here at the end of the tail really set the paint scheme off to look quite nice, actually, for the most part. And that area just looks super striking to me. If we look at the opposing side, again, the head sculpt looks pretty nice, but a little off in my opinion. And then we come down the neck, you can see that same skin texture and everything looks really beautiful on this side like we saw on the opposing side. Same deal as far as the bones protruding from the skin. Over here again, it looks a little bit sick, a little bit too thin and shrink wrapped. But it does appear to definitely have some really nice musculature here in the legs, that's for sure. So it's definitely got some gym time in on its days of starving. But you can see that there is some nice skin texture again in this side of the stomach. You can also see that these two legs are pushing toward each other, bunching the skin here in the stomach up quite a bit. Nice muscle tone here in the rear leg. And again, the nails are painted really quite nicely in both the front and rear legs. And then we come out the length of the tail again. Really nice skin texture the whole way out. And again, that beautiful curve right there at the end. The detail on the underside also looks pretty good, but overall, I think it's definitely a very nice figure. Nice to see the cloaca there as well for some extra bit of realism. Definitely a very nice figure, but not even close to my favorite Terra by Battat figure. As far as the size goes, on the Amargasaurus, it's not very large, fairly small. About 7 inches in length, or about 18 centimeters. And the highest point is honestly the curl in the tail. It's about 3 inches, or 7.5 centimeters. But to the top of the neck area, about 2¼ inches probably, or about 6 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, and next to him you can definitely tell that these are pretty small figures. Definitely on the smaller scale, but still really quite nice looking in general. I think that the Terra by Battat line is severely underrated, but at the same time loved by so many just because they are really beautiful figures, and you should definitely be able to tell that here with the up-close look that we took at it. But next to the Papo Rex, you can in fact tell that with that sculpt and detail that is included, it's a little bit more impressive probably now, just to show you how small a figure really is, because they crammed a great amount of detail and sculpt into a pretty small figure. So as far as the Terra by Battat Amargasaurus goes, it's got its ups and it's got its downs. It's got some good parts and some bad parts. I think that the overall appearance to it is really nice. I think the paint scheme that they went with is definitely a pretty appealing looking one. It's something that's fairly natural-ish for a sauropod, and I love the orange there up on the neck, just giving it such a beautiful striking look. I also love the striping there at the end of the tail. Something about striping on the end of a sauropod tail is always really appealing to me. And they did that really nicely here on this Amargasaurus. I don't like the glossy effect that they've used for the majority of the paint. I think that is definitely a bit of a downside, because I don't see a sauropod being glossy or shiny unless we're going to consider this an Amargasaurus out in the rain. Then maybe I guess we can accept the glossy appearance to it. I think the paint in some areas looks pretty naturally applied. It definitely looks pretty good, but in some other areas it looks like paint and not so much like body color. So it's a little 50-50 as far as the actual application of the paint goes, but I do like the idea that they had for the paint scheme. It's just not applied perfectly in my opinion. I think the sculpt of it and the detail is really quite nice. There's lots of very nice, very fine sculpt work as far as the skin texture goes. The movement is really quite beautifully shown throughout the dinosaur. Again, it does look too thin. It does look shrink-wrapped and a bit sickly, as I feel like it's starving, and the head sculpt isn't the most appealing out of all of the Terra by Battat figures. I think that could have definitely been a bit better, but the figure is pretty small, so things like that when you have such an incredibly tiny head sculpt I can kind of let slide. Overall though, it's still a very appealing looking figure, and considering we don't get too many Amargasaurus figures, I'm still psyched regardless to have one. I think I might prefer the original one from Terra by Battat over this repaint. However, I can say that regardless, this is still a very nice looking Amargasaurus. And if you are a fan of this species, dinosaurs in general, or sauropods specifically, it's not a bad figure to search out and acquire. So I will put a link in the description for you to pick this up if you are in fact interested. So check the description, go buy this Terra by Battat Amargasaurus. But before you do that, don't forget to please like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell to be notified of any future videos, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.